I think it's really important and has been accelerated. Device fragmentation and the need to be able to connect devices has been accelerated in our new kind of normal. I know it's an overused term, but I think it really does speak to what we're dealing with right now. Um, and what we have seen is prior to this situation is that there was a lot of fragmentation of devices. People were moving more and more toward digital devices. And one of the challenges of advertisers and marketers was to be able to connect those and make sure that you had a unified message going out to your consumers. That's become even more important now because you have a accelerated transition to digital devices. Think about people that weren't interacting from a digital standpoint in large volumes before. They're all doing that now. And so it's more important than ever as an advertiser, as a marketer, to know that you're reaching your consumers with a consistent message. And whether that's advertising, so making sure that you are having the same message and not conflicting messages depending on if you're reaching them on their phone or their laptop or through a streaming device. And it's the same thing from a marketing standpoint. When you think about the consumer experience and all of the ways that they're engaging with your brand, whether it's through service or marketing, and being able to make sure that you have a consistent message across those different touch points as well.
What are your thoughts about understanding consumers as we sort of don't have those cookies or we won't?
Yeah, I mean, so a couple things, a couple trends that we see. One is first-party data is becoming more important than ever. And it's always been important, but you will see the rise of platforms that help, like CDPs, or we have a CIP at Oracle, Customer Intelligence Platform, but where marketers can bring in their first-party data and then help them understand their consumers, but also augment that data with third party to be able to truly understand the consumer and then be able to message to them appropriately. The other thing is we, especially now, we have seen an accelerated trend in the move to CTV, to connected TV. We were seeing that trend already pre-COVID era, but we've seen that accelerate drastically, and again, hit a lot of different parts of the consumer base that maybe hadn't been moving down that path before. It was just kind of a forced step change. And so with that, I think you're going to have a whole new way of interacting with consumers that is accelerating rapidly, where cookies probably become less and less important over time.
Michelle, can you explain how Oracle sort of operates in the CTV world, how you guys fit into that ecosystem, and how you work with data providers?
Sure. So it's interesting because it's very similar to how we operate in a digital world, and that's the beauty of CTV, is it allows us to do all of the things that we do on the digital side, but now in a connected TV way. So if you think about the things that we do and the products and services that we offer to advertisers, one is being able to reach the right audiences. So using data, we work with a number of different data partners in order to reach the correct audiences, which I think is even more important now as you think about it, because there are limited ad dollars to spend. People want to be really conscientious about how they're going to spend those dollars. And so reaching the right audience is going to be really important. The second is we also are, one of our areas where we focus is helping advertisers reach consumers when they're consuming the right content. And so it's important, it's really a mix of reaching the right audience, but also getting them when they're in the right frame of mind, which again, we've seen accelerated during this time period. Because if you think about it, most of the news that's being consumed right now is about COVID. And we've seen a lot of things related to brand safety, for example, where there's been kind of a blunt instrument of don't advertise near COVID, that's a bad thing. But that's not necessarily the case. If you have somebody that's reading a story about neighbors coming together and helping a neighbor that was in distress, that might be a place where you want your brand to show up. Or you're reading about positive health findings. Maybe it's trends in new drugs to combat the virus. That's possibly another place where, depending on your brand, you might want to show up. Versus, something about increasing death tolls where you probably don't want your brand to show up. And so we offer products around contextual advertising that really allows advertisers to go into the nuance of what's being consumed to be able to reach audiences in the right way. And that's all transferable as we move into CTV as well. And then the final piece is really around measurement. So understanding, and I think this is going to become more important than ever, because as we're trying to understand advertising trends and they're changing. And the one thing I do know, I can't predict the future, but the one thing I do know is things are going to change drastically. Probably in some ways we are pretty, confident that they will, in other ways that we have no idea. And so how do we understand how to advertise going forward in that type of a situation? It's by getting feedback and data via measurement. And so that's the other area where we focus. Which is really about understanding at the very front end analytics. How is your consumer engaging with your advertising? Is it actually a person? How are they watching your video all the way through, or for what period of time? All the way through to how consumers engage or interact across different media types. So we have measurement products that look at both digital advertising, but then across TV as well. And then finally, how are consumers actually purchasing based on your advertising? Are they increasing their purchases in store, or does it not have an effect in increased consumer purchases?
And sort of as a follow-up to that, in closing, what do you see as sort of being changed, accelerated through this whole crisis? The things that you kind of are thinking about now, and of course, as you mentioned earlier, there's certain things that are unknowable. What are some thoughts you have about where we might be going in the next 6 months to a year in terms of the tools we have and the way the industry functions?
Sure. So first of all, digital transformation. Many companies have toyed with the notion. They've started, they've maybe paused, weren't sure if they were going to invest. Some went in full bore a long time ago. But those days of whether or not to digitally transform are over. It is here and now, and the only companies that are going to succeed going forward are those that embrace it wholly. And it's kind of good. It's a ripping off of the Band-Aid, and folks need to jump in, all the way. Which again, I feel is a good thing. There are lots of tools out there to help advertisers and marketers as they're going through that transformation. The second thing is really around how consumers are going to be engaging going forward. And we talked a little bit about digital devices and the just rapid increase of that. I think also when and how those are used, if we think about the shift to working from home, and I think that's a trend that's not going to go away. It may change a little bit as we go forward, but almost anyone that's a CEO or a company leader that I've spoken with, that is definitely part of their plan going forward, is to have some portion of their employee base work from home. And so it's going to be more important than ever to understand how your consumers are consuming media. And then the final thing is, I think there are going to be a lot of changes in consumption behavior of consumers that we just don't know about. And it'll be very interesting to see how that changes how you engage with your consumer as a brand. So one example is in a grocery store right now, when I go in to buy something, a lot of times brands that I'm loyal to aren't available on the shelf. And so I'm forced to switch and try a new brand. So there is a lot of new trial happening among consumers right now. And if I'm that brand that's being tried, I want to know that somebody actually tried me for the first time, and B, understand how I'm going to engage with them and try to encourage them to stay loyal to me now going forward. And so I think that we're going to see a lot of pockets of consumer shifts in behavior like that are going to pop up, that are going to be really important to advertisers and marketers going forward.